Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Iain Livingston says he did not tip off Nicola Sturgeon prior to the raid on her home. The fact that she had her bags packed and was just leaving as they turned up obviously is entirely coincidental. But when you actually look at the words he said, I think they may well have been chosen with extreme care. Because it wasn't just a blatant, no, never happened, blah, blah, blah. There was enough vagueness in order to sort of muddy the waters a little bit. We'll look at this article. It's not a long article or anything, but it does. I think it is quite telling that as now he's retiring and leaving, he doesn't want to have any kind of postscript to his career. He wants to clear everything up, get it off his desk, and go and never be questioned on this particular subject again. Anyway, here goes. Bop. So Scotland's outgoing top cop says he did not tip off Nicola Sturgeon about Peter Murrell's impending arrest. And if you believe that, I've got a bridge to sell you. Sir Iain Livingston dismissed claims that his police force had been in contact with the former First Minister about the potential arrest of her husband, the SNP Chief Executive, or the ex-SNP Chief Executive. This is what he says, but we need to listen to his words. You have to see the words he's using, because they're very, very specific. Scotland's outgoing top cop has said he and his force did not tip off Nicola Sturgeon and that her husband was due to be arrested. Peter Murrell was detained by detectives on April the 5th, just over the month after the former First Minister suddenly resigned out of the blue from her role. She has adamantly claimed that no current pressures had driven her to quit, but we know she tells tall tales occasionally. But opponents have asserted that it was much too much of a coincidence that she announced she was leaving the job on February the 15th. She's also been arrested and questioned by police, finally, months later. Now Sir Iain Livingston has said it is an absolute outrage to suggest that the former Miss Sturgeon, I think she's still the Miss Sturgeon, former First Minister Miss Sturgeon, I think they meant. Honestly, journalism, terrible. Was tipped off in advance of Mr Murrell's arrest. He added that nobody in his force had informed the Scottish Government about the... Now, this is the line. Nobody in his force had informed the Scottish Government about the impending operation. That's line one. He was asked by STV News about speculation among MSPs at Holyrood that this was the case and that it had directly led to her resignation. The retiring cop said, categorically not. Absolutely outrageous suggestion to imply that I or my investigative team act with anything other than total integrity. This is the police. Every day I'm reporting on policemen who act outside of anything close to integrity. So we can't, you can't take that word for it. He says, when an investigation develops, you have to go and start speaking to other witnesses. You have to go and take other steps. I do not know the reason the former First Minister resigned, but I do know it was certainly nothing to do with any tip-off coming from my office or me personally. You know that, do you? You're absolutely sure that you know that without fail, that absolutely nobody tipped anyone off. You know that. You're saying and claiming that. You don't know. You speculate that that is the case, but you cannot possibly know it. He said all three were released pending further investigations. The marital home of the couple was also raided by detectives who spent over a day searching the property and its grounds. Police Scotland has been dogged by rumours and suggestions that it has been communicating with the SNP as it prepared to make arrests with unminuted meetings with the then Justice Secretary Keith Brown. Unminuted meetings. They're making claims that nobody in his office or in his investigation spoke to anyone in the government. And then they've come up with unminuted meetings. You just let that sink in. You have a cop who's retiring and for whom it doesn't matter. You have unminuted meetings. He's making very specific claims that he did not communicate this to anyone in the Scottish Government. That does not mean that it wasn't communicated via back channels. He's very specific in his terminology. And then you have these unminuted meetings. It's suspicious as hell, isn't it? However, Sir Ian told Scotland Tonight that nobody from her office had approached the force about the status of the investigation. It doesn't have to be. So, nobody from her office didn't speak to the Scottish Government, being very specific in naming the groups. What he's not saying is anybody. Anybody at all. Nobody in my force spoke to nobody. He's saying that nobody in his force didn't speak to that person, didn't speak to that group, didn't speak to that group. There is a difference. Absence of evidence does not imply evidence of absence, you know. Now, people may feel I could have done other things as the Chief Constable. Yes, you certainly could. That I could have done more of this or less of that. And I don't think any senior politician or anybody who has observed policing in the last number of years in Scotland would think that I'm anything other than totally operationally independent. I guard that rigorously. I don't think you're totally independent. When you're having unminuted meetings with Keith Brown, seems very suspicious. First Minister Hamza Yousaf has been forced to defend his party from suggestions that they were in cahoots over the timing of Mr Murrell's arrest. Yes, of course they were. Anyone looking at that. And we've got another article coming up later exactly about that. Why the delay? Why such a long delay between the issuing or the request for the warrant and the issuing of the warrant? Oh look, there's an election in the middle where we want the SNP to get in the candidate that they were pushing. And if we arrest Murrell now, it may change people's minds and you might end up with Kate Forbes. Of course it's suspicious. Everything about this stinks. It absolutely stinks. And for him to say, oh, I didn't speak to that group and I didn't speak to that group, that doesn't mean he didn't speak to someone. It doesn't mean he didn't use back channels, and it certainly doesn't absolve him from the absolute fact that people are suspicious. People are questioning this because it is suspicious and it needs to be questioned. And I'm coming up. No official meetings between senior politicians and policemen should ever be unminuted. So you have to ask, why was it unminuted? What was the discussion? We'll never know. And if you ask them, they'll just plain lie. Or they'll do the old cranky, oh, I have no recollection of those events. You know, political amnesia is a wonderful thing, isn't it? But you can guarantee that somebody tipped her off. There's no way she would up and leave so suddenly and then blame it on some policy that wasn't even hers. Load of rubbish. She knew what was coming. You cannot expect people to believe, given the seriousness of the allegations, given the timing of everything, that it was anything like anything. It wasn't a coincidence. It just wasn't. Once is happenstance, twice is coincidence, 3 times. That's enemy action. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. If you like what you hear and see on the channel, please hit the subscribe button, leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, and always minute your meetings. Goodbye.